Sweden and South Africa recently had a seminar on green trade relations. This means that they focused on how to get companies from both countries highlighting climate change and environmental awareness to do better business. To talk more about this, we joined in studio by project manager Michael Edholm from the Swedish Trade Council. Michael, thanks so much for making time this morning.
Thanks for letting me come.
All right, if we were to look at the Swedish and South African trade, we know that the EU is our biggest trader, but specifically, what is it that we trade with Sweden?
Well, trade with Sweden has increased quite dramatically over the last few years. It actually increased 50% last year. Most of that is in manufacturing being exported from Sweden to South Africa and commodities going back from South Africa to Sweden. But it's a 49% increase in 1 year, which is quite impressive.
Yeah, and the Green Trade Initiative aims to enhance and solidify the trade relations, but specifically looking at climate change and environmentally friendly activities.
Absolutely. Sweden is in the forefront of quite a few of the green tech technologies, and specifically wastewater management, transportation and communications. And in all these three areas, there are quite a number of projects that can be realized here in South Africa.
Do you find it's difficult really for companies, even governments, to embrace the green trade, particularly because at this point it doesn't necessarily make financial sense, or the fact that it's going to take quite a bit of capital to transform the technologies we have to be environmentally friendly?
No, on the contrary, I think it makes a lot of financial sense. We have a number of examples where in Sweden, for example, one of the inner suburbs of Stockholm was recently more greenified, so to speak. And what happened was that we reduced energy consumption by about 40%, electricity by some 60%, and property values went up 26%. Now, those are quite impressive numbers, so clearly things are happening. What we're seeing at the moment is awareness becoming understanding. It's taking a little time, but we're getting there.
All right. So now you're identifying companies both in Sweden and South Africa that can do better trade based on this alternative energy technology, if you will. It's not necessarily a prerequisite as yet to do business. Is it still seen as more a social corporate investment for most companies, greening their policies?
I think it's good policy and good advertising for a lot of companies to say that they are becoming more green, clearly. But it also makes a lot of financial sense. Most of the green technologies are about saving energy, about making more efficient use of existing resources, which is really what business is all about in the first place. So I think we're getting to a point where the green technologies are not becoming alternative technologies, but much more mainstream technologies.
All right. At which point of the project are you now? You're not at implementation stage. You're still creating awareness, really trying to lobby and canvass those companies to say, look, this is the way to go for the future.
Yes, that's very much what we're doing at the moment. And today there's about 100 companies from Sweden that are established in South Africa already, and another 400 which have representation one way or another here. What we want to see, of course, is more involvement, both from the government and the regulators here, and, of course, from the companies themselves. But we're getting there.
But what makes your wishes near impossible in trying to realize them?
I don't think they're impossible. It takes time, because what we have at the moment is a situation where awareness is here. People understand that green issues are something to be concerned about. What we need to reach is the next step, the understanding and the insight that this needs to be done, and it needs to be done now.
But should you be targeting the strategic leadership, the executives, where perhaps you could be looking at their consumers, for argument's sake? If the consumer is aware that, look, if company A were to change their practices and policies, I would be contributing to the climate change, or, you know, to better improve environmental issues.
Absolutely. In the end, it's all about the consumer. It's all about the benefits to the consumer. But the way to get there is through the government regulations and the companies doing what they do best, doing business.
Yeah. There's a huge drive in terms of growing small or medium enterprises in the country. Are you focusing on those, or are you looking at petroleum companies and huge or bigger multinationals?
The Swedish Trade Council is traditionally focused on small and medium-sized companies. But a lot of these initiatives also involve larger companies. So clearly, if we want something to happen, we need to get the large companies on board. The small companies are usually subcontractors to the large ones, and they will follow automatically.
In terms of alternative energy sources that have already been implemented in the country based on your research, what have you found is already running smoothly and just needs to be boosted a little bit more?
Well, we'd like to boost all of them, clearly. Now, what we see already is, for example, in the communications area, the mobile base stations that are being put in place, a lot of them have now enclosures which include wind generators and solar panels. And they can also be remotely controlled. So they're highly efficient and very easily maintained, which is ideal for this environment.
Okay, so you're going to start an aggressive campaign now to get out, to get the word out there and get more buy-in, and then what?
I think we're doing what we can at the moment, which is raising the awareness and the understanding. And we've been using this seminar, which we had week before last, in order to get there. But clearly, more needs to be done. But the Swedish Trade Council can only do so much. What we see is that it's really a corporate responsibility to become more green over time.
Yeah. So now you just have the agreement based on principle to say, yes, we agree, we may do business with you, nothing concrete really.
Well, there are concrete projects, of course, that we can demonstrate, and there will be more projects. And I will be most pleased to come back and tell you about the successes that we expect to be having over the next year or so.
Okay, let's just highlight one that you're focusing on that you believe would generate more towards the GDP and also solidify trade.
Well, I think the best example that I could give is a concept that's been developed in Sweden, which is called Symbio City. And the idea here is not to look specifically at individual technologies like wastewater management, like energy conservation, etc., but at the synergies between them. How can you combine various technologies in order to get a better result? And this concept we're now moving around the world to a lot of places, including South Africa. And the benefits from this has been very substantial so far. And there also has been a number of demonstration projects in Sweden, and there has been one project here in South Africa, in Buffalo City, which we hope to be able to talk more about in a little while.
Because the impact of climate change is a huge concern. I think the figures are that by 2050, if we continue the way we are, we're going to need another planet to sustain life, human life on planet Earth.
Yes, I've seen those numbers as well. I don't know how realistic they are, but clearly it is an issue, and we need to address it, and we need to address it today.
Yeah. All right, Michael. Thanks so much for making time this morning.
Thanks for having me.
We're speaking to Michael Edholm from the Swedish Trade Council, speaking about a recent conference that they had, the Swedish and South African businesses, to promote the increased awareness around climate change and environmental awareness. We'll certainly be keeping up to breast with them as to what comes out from those talks. Let's take a look at how the rand is trading against major currencies.